Is it recording for you?
Recording for me. Yeah,
Oh,
you can
okay.
hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. All
Okay.
right. So anyway, go on. I'm sorry. Type A.
Yeah, yeah. For me, one of the biggest things I have to do is really control my nighttime routine. Because if I start talking or reading about numbers and ideas and things, I'll just be up churning all night. And if I have something in the morning, I have to really do it because then I'll be thinking about that presentation in the morning or whatever else, at least until it becomes something that I do routinely. But if it's like a new thing
Yeah.
in the morning, just and my brain's ticking. Does not matter what doesn't matter what it is. If it's new, if it's something that can be planned, I think if you're a planner, that's I don't know. I mean, maybe you're the same way, but
So what I deal with is I'll wake up in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m., and
mm,
my brain will suddenly be on fire with thoughts and ideas. And when that happens, I've learned that I need to have a pad of paper next to my bed. And I've
mm,
got to jot this down because if I don't and I fall back to sleep, it's all gone. I lose it.
mm,
Or the other part is if I am up and it's not because of the ideas it's more of the fears and the worries and the anxieties. And when that happens, I still need the piece of paper because if you can name your fear,
mm.
if you can name that anxiety, something about writing it down releases it. And so that's what I do. If I'm getting plagued by something, I will say, stop. I'll get up, write it down. Just write down. What am I scared of? What is worrying me? What's biting at my toes? And I'll write it down. And I find that just that simple act, I'm now able to go back to sleep.
That's incredible because the time that I have is always right around 3 o'clock. Same thing for me all the time, and it's one or
That's
two.
the hour of the wolf. That's when most babies are born and most people die.
Did you know somebody sent me this? I used to do some marketing work with them, and they sent me this that 1800s people they would constantly refer to it as two sleeps. So it's not this magical thing. So you'd have your first sleep,
Mhm.
and then most people would wake up right around that hour, like three, whatever, and then they go back to bed and they'd sleep again. And so he sent me all these literature sources, like you can research it, all kinds of articles about, and people don't refer to that really anymore now. So once I read that, I was like, because belief is so powerful, right? So, oh, this is normal. I can
Mhm.
just get up, write stuff down. Writing is the only thing that really works for me too. But it helps. A book that I love called Winning by Tim Grover. He's this guy that trained Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and all this different stuff. Anyway, he talks about like your demons coming and visiting you at night, and it can be powerful to hear what they're saying,
Yeah.
right? Which I guess writing it down is like, what are those? Because there's something happening in the subconscious that wakes you up if you're thinking about that. It could be something that's coming up, could be what are your biggest fears, the things that wake you up at night. So
Yeah. Yeah.
exploring those can help.
I completely agree. I do feel like if it's trying to tell you something, if it's trying to tell you something, why mute it? Why try to drug it? Why try to do something? Listen to it. Maybe there's something there. And if you could listen to it, then you can take action against it.
I have a love-hate relationship with things like that. I always think back when I was in a similar way to when I was like competing in college for like a sport, right? Like right before you have to go out there, you have these nerves and they're so intense. You're like, I would give anything to have these nerves go right. And I used to have coaches say, one day you're going to be praying that you could still do this and that you'd still have these nerves. And I was like, no way. I want these out, gone. It doesn't matter if you could think about it as like baseball before you go to bat or whatever the sport is. And now I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had something that was that competitive with that many people in attendance, everything. Like you wish for that. Same thing. If you do a webinar or something and you have a lot of people attending, you're like, oh my God, I'm nervous. You're
Mhm.
like, thank God I can still get nervous. Thank God I still have something that can elevate my senses.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
so I think the same thing for waking up in the middle of the night. There's the part of me, I just want to be at peace, rest, fully slept, no anxiety. But then we know that without that, you have none of the good stress and you have nothing to look forward to. And you're not like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I want this.
Isaiah, you're so right. And I don't think I wasn't even thinking of it like that, but it is a good thing, right? To have that stress, that means you're having that electricity, you're having that fun, you're
Yes.
having those challenges. Without those challenges, Yeah, maybe you're sleeping through the night, but life's dull.
I listen to another guy, Eric Thomas, that talks about this all the time about people that are get in the zone. Like it doesn't matter. He refers to interview with like Beyonce Knowles or something else where it's like when they were writing their like I'm sleeping like 4 hours. I don't have time to sleep. Like
Yeah.
my assistants or whatever at the door at 4 a.m. I got to go to this shoot, fly to this place, and they're like, because this is their moment. Like they
Yeah.
have this is where they can do all this stuff. And I think a lot of people focus too heavily, especially as they start to get an upward climb to peaking. They're like, I gotta let me. What am I missing from my life? I got to add in some of this kind of self care. I got to add in. I'm not doing enough relationships. And I'm doing like they're right there about to really just take off and skyrocket the stuff they say they always want. But something's wrong. Like I'm too anxious. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I'm doing this. So anyway, there's two ways to look at it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think for me, I love talking to executives.
Yeah.
Like those are the people that I get excited over, but I really also love those professionals who want to transition to
Yeah.
that. They want to up level. And so to me, it's those two. Those are the areas that I love. It's those who are professionals who are saying, I want more.
Sure.
I want more out of my life. I'm not happy just checking in and checking out. Like I want to do something. I love that. And I love those who are doing something, those who are in that leadership position, who are now looking back and saying, how can I empower? How can I
Okay.
help? So those are the two areas that I really love. And that gets me excited. And when we were chatting earlier in terms of who's the target audience and what is this really about, I keep coming back to, and you said it as well, it's taking control of your career and
Yeah.
empowering people. Like I
Right.
really feel that is important. When I look back at my own life, when I was in corporate,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any mentor. I didn't have anyone telling me,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, you should always be looking at that next position. You should be looking having a career vision for yourself." And like really I didn't even know that was possible. And I think there's a lot of people who have no idea how to steer their career. And so steer your career. But I think there's something there, and I think that fits really well because you're teaching people how to steer their career, how to pivot, how to change, how to level up, how to do something different, right? It's taking
Sure.
control. And for me, that's true as well. It's like, how can we get people to not be under the thumb of the man?
Some more. So to there's also like a breaking free component, having self, more autonomy, despite having to work for somebody, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Because I think there's some people who they work for someone and they're taking the toxicity, they're taking because they feel that they have to. It's, "Oh, this is part of work." But I think you can still have a lot of freedom and work for someone if you're empowered and you know what you bring to the table and you're negotiating and you're advocating for yourself.
Mm.
That to me that's a big difference.
I think what you're saying is interesting to me because I don't know if I believe that today, and I'll
Mhm.
tell you why.
Okay, tell me.
And no, I no, and but you're right in a sense. I don't think I think that if anybody just works for somebody, even if it's not a toxic environment, that is going to be very limiting today.
Mhm.
And because of, and you've said this in previous episodes, like just corporations and stuff, they're not set up like that. They're not
Yeah.
loyal for 20, 30 years. They can't be because it's so profit driven and just the way economics is and it's been financialized, which you could go into. So the only way to really secure yourself is to do something autonomously.
Yeah.
And people call it a side hustle, whatever else, but I don't think that's very executive level. I really think for executive level, it comes down to some type of consulting or coaching. And that's why I've
Right.
always been big on that because I really think, and it doesn't matter if it's career coaching or other types of consulting, there's, I
Well,
think
the
whatever,
fractional is exploding right now.
yeah, whatever you are, like whatever you are, and whatever your high barrier to entry skills are that got you to the executive level, because very likely you're in some high level domain. You're in a segment, whether
Yeah.
it's the S&P 500 sectors and industries or some other way you want to define it, you're high level. Somebody else wants to be at that level. Somebody else wants to learn what you have, whether it's other small businesses, whether it's other people that want to have the job that you have. So the only way to feel a sense of empowerment and freedom and to really take control is to build something of your own. And like when I used to write about this all the time. I haven't written about it in 10 years. Like when I was in grad school, thought I was dying. I was having an existential crisis because I couldn't get out. It's not like getting an MD or these other things where it's your fourth year, you've graduated. Basically, you just have a panel of people that decide to let you go. And this is why some PhDs are like 10 years, right? So anyway, I'm with my personality type, I'm like, I'm going to die here. Like I'm going to be here forever. So the only thing that saved me was I read the 4-hour work week and I was like, a blog, what's that? I started writing a blog while I was still in school, really saved my life because it gave me something that I could control, my sense of autonomy,
Yeah.
and something that I could build. And it gave me hope again. And I was having like serious health issues. Like I was having kidney problems from stress, all this kind of stuff. Because I think nothing is worse than a human who feels like they have no control over their life. Every study says this. There's better outcomes for anything you face when you feel a sense of control or you find the things you can control your circle of influence. You did this. You wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have that exact same epiphany of I need to take control of something. Nobody's going to give me control. Nobody's going to give me permission.
Mhm.
So I'm going to build this thing over here, whatever it is, while I'm dealing with this over here. And then whether or not they decide to do it full time is irrelevant.
Mhm. I hear you, and I do believe you. I believe that you're absolutely correct. I just struggle believing that the vast majority of people can do it because it's so hard and it's so all-consuming. And so because of that,
So it's being healthy.
well, that's true too.
Would you say that to somebody who needs to eat healthy? Most people are actually very unhealthy.
Mhm.
So we just need to start telling people how to eat unhealthy because they're never going to be healthy. I'm not
Yeah,
trying to
no,
get
I mean,
into
I
like,
I hear you. I just
yeah,
there are certain people who can do it.
yeah,
I don't know if healthy and career autonomy are necessarily one to one. I want people to go out on their own. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. That truly is the best way.
yeah,
It's the hardest way.
for sure.
But I also know like where I am in my life now versus when I started. So when I started, I was 30.
Mm,
I think I was 35-ish, somewhere around there, 34, 35. Wasn't married,
mm,
didn't clearly didn't have any kids. I was free as a bird.
mm,
And I had my epiphany. I'm going to start my own business. I'm
yeah,
going to help people embrace technology. I'm going to help people embrace social media. I'm going to create websites. And I'm going to, bizarrely as it is, I'm going to write LinkedIn profiles
yeah, yeah,
for people because they can't write about themselves. Now, of all of the things, that was the one that truly like
sure.
exploded on me. At the time, it was one of a couple things. But Isaiah, that's all I did. I ate and I breathed and I slept and I washed and LinkedIn. That was my life.
Yeah,
And that's all I did for at least 2 years before I started to make money from it.
yeah,
So to me, for me right now, I have a husband, I've got kids, I've got a mortgage, I've got so much more.
mm,
It's just, I don't know how plausible it is for people to do that, to break out on their own. Now, maybe they can do side gigs. It's hard, but I think maybe you can help people to do that. But for those who can, I want them to. But those who are they're in that box,
yeah. And
how can I help you empower yourself and take control in the situation that you are? Does that make sense?
it does. And I agree. So I had no means, and I don't even recommend this for everybody to go out on your own. I do think you have to build something on your own on the side. But I've also learned that not everybody's like me, like other people. I certainly don't have it figured out. I've, any path you take is going to have different pains. But I do believe you have to carve something else out that can be on your own. Now, for some people, it can just be a hobby. So let's say you're working in corporate. You can consult on the side and have something of your own. It's just going to make you more value to corporate no matter what they say. Yeah, sure, you might have to drop a non-compete or whatever else, and you might have certain things contractually to take care of. But I'm not talking about even having the goal of breaking out on your own. So maybe consulting on the side, having something of your own. For some people, it's philanthropy. That gives them something of their own that they have that's separate and gives them that sense of empowerment and motivation. But other people, it can seriously just be golf. It can be other things too.
I also, as you're saying this, Isaiah, I had this idea, this thought. In some ways, I'm always talking about a personal brand and developing that personal brand.
Yeah.
Isn't it almost the same that what we're talking about? It's recognizing who you are, what you do, what you represent, knowing your value, right? Because it's not enough just to say, let's have a brand. Everyone has a brand, but like really develop something that's specific. And it is something that you can, if you do it well and you become known and you
Yeah.
become dependent upon and you become that person that when a person thinks, oh, I'm thinking of Isaiah, whatever that is, then you could monetize it.
Yeah. And monetize or not, I think the professional branding point will help you in your career either way. And this can get into other topics we've talked about, even on a quantitative level. So I will have to find this article, but it was shocking because we've talked a lot about AI and how it
Mhm.
looks at things. And so we're like, you got to talk about hobbies. I know you do this, like, you got to talk about things that you do because it makes you well rounded, it humanizes you. But even more than that, the article that I read,
Yeah.
companies are feeding thousands of past resumes into their AI to see what are the common denominators for their high performers.
Yeah.
This AI found, without the employers even knowing it, because it's all these machine learning algorithms,
Yeah.
found that anyone who did baseball or softball was a high performer. And so it
Oh,
automatically started screening for resumes that had a baseball or softball sport listed on it as a hobby or as something they'd done in the past, and putting them on the hiring manager's desk. And it wasn't until like much later the hiring managers even knew this was happening. So again, they're
amazing.
all these things are connected. So we were one thing that's been out in a lot of articles too is how there's this subset. There was a survey. We'll have to link this article to the show notes too, that said, I don't know, it was like 50% of candidates are concerned about not having enough skills. 18 are concerned about having too many, being overqualified. This is
Yeah.
something like for executives that they're going to face more. So what was one of the ways to compensate for that is to humanize yourself, to have this professional brand, to have something else going on, to have hobbies, things you're doing on the side, other things. Like a lot of people that I talk to, I don't know if you're the same, they think, oh no, I got to show just this one thing,
Yeah.
but that can be too narrow.
Oh, and with AI, I think what's going to really differentiate people is that humanity. It's being that human.
Mm.
And maybe it's if it's not baseball or softball, it's just saying, "Hey, I'm real. I've got a life outside." I think they're gonna become hungry for that because that's going to be a differentiator between what who cares and who doesn't care. You had said something there that rang a bell for me. When people say they're overqualified, do you believe that, or is that just an excuse because they're not a fit?
Uh, I think there's 3 or 4 key reasons.
Mhm,
This article just came out in Forbes that nailed every single reason. And I
mhm.
only know this because I was looking them up earlier the show. But it said one reason is they literally don't even know what box to put you in. So they'll just say it as an excuse that can't get them sued. Because that is a real thing. There are employers that can't say you just don't feel right. They can't say that. They're gonna say
Right.
you're overqualified. And then there is this self-justification part of ourselves is, oh, I had too many skills. Like
Yeah,
it's a bit soothing than
yeah.
you're not good enough. So I think there's that, but I think mainly, yeah, what you said is the biggest reason. Like you just didn't position yourself for this role. You didn't speak their language. We see it with like high level academics because they're talking about academic jargon way up here, and the hiring manager's like, no idea what this means. You're clearly overqualified, but somehow you don't have enough skills either. Like you don't have enough experience at the same time. But yeah, so I think that's it. Quite a bit. And or they're afraid you're a flight risk. If they think and you wanna speak to executives, right? If
Mhm,
there's somebody up here and they're coming down the pyramid,
mhm.
they're gonna and they haven't explained that rationale. Like, if you're going to get hired at a Starbucks floor position, I'm like, "Donna, why are you doing this? Like, you're gonna leave immediately. There's
Yeah.
no certainty you're gonna hurt my 2-year retention rate, not gonna happen." So I think that's another reason too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I also think overqualified, maybe it 1, are you positioning yourself for the right role, like you said? Are you coming down too low? But the other part, I do think we're seeing a lot of Gen X who are at that point. I had a client contact me just the other day. He's now a grandfather, and he wants to slow down a little bit. He doesn't wanna have the
Mm,
stress. He's 58, and he says, "I wanna move. I wanna make a move, but where do I go?" And I was just reading a book. I wish I had it. where it says you get into your late 40s. Actually, they said 40s, which seemed young to me. Let's go with the late 40s. And you do start to slow down a little. You really do. You're not pulling those all night gigs. You don't have that the same because life changes too. The brain changes. And what you have to do is you have to start to pivot your own career because most people who are 58, you don't want that really high velocity stuff going on. I don't think so. Maybe some do, and God bless you. But it's almost you have to start to position yourself and change your career to be seen as the mentor, to be seen as the trainer, to be seen as the teacher, to use the knowledge as opposed to the muscle. And that's for my client, that's what we started to talk about was how can we start to flip and switch your career so it is more about knowledge versus you're going to pull up your sleeves and get the work done. How can you now become that person who maybe is
Mm.
orchestrating those who are?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does. I am not on board with slowing down as you get older. I'm going to 100% go faster. I think of like the Zig Ziglars. I think of these people that they were speaking 50 events per year at the age of 70. So I love that. But I do think you have to get smarter. I think you have to be more of the matriarch or the patriarch or whatever, and like the
Yeah.
more the sage, and you have to get people underneath. Like
That's exactly what I'm saying. We're
yeah,
we're on the same space. Yeah.
I love people in the entertainment industry, for example, that used to be like the singers, and then they became the producers or the people that used to be actors. And I just say this because it's more visible to a lot of people that became directors,
Yeah.
and then went even beyond that and became producers. And now they're just making the high level decisions. And so they kept, well, while other people just kept acting,
Yeah.
they never went up, and the other people just kept trying to sing and never went up. And then you see these people, how do they become like the more iconic in terms of the business space? There's a lot of names out there that have 100 million billion-dollar brands because they parlayed
Mhm.
up like that. So yeah, so I think you have to make that pivot. I wouldn't necessarily say go down to, okay, I'm late 40s. I want to just take a part-time job doing some consulting on the side. I actually think there's a responsibility to like yourself to really like you've made it to that level.
Mhm.
There's a bigger level.
Yeah.
And I don't
But I
want you
think
to
the difference is there are it's do you wanna go strategic or do you wanna be more tactical? And it's the idea of you don't have to necessarily be the person who's burning the midnight oil, but
for
you
sure.
could be the one that's envisioning it, and
For sure.
that's more of it. Because I hear you, I certainly I don't want it to be like, "Oh, you're old, check out." Definitely not that, but what I'm saying is, let's use the elevator and go up a floor.
And get people bring in, yeah, you got to bring in youth and young talent, and you have to do that. You really do. And if you look at anyone who does this effectively, any business, academia, they just keep bringing in the new students. The research, that's something that I know it's not going to be it's not going to be any different though in a business. You bring in interns every year. You bring in those interns, you learn things from them. You bring in those grad students, you learn things from them, and then it keeps going up. So you can't stay at that level forever. Like you can't keep doing what a grad student's doing. You can't do what an intern's doing. Like you have to go up here and then teach more and more subordinates how to do it for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll burn out anyway. It's hard work. It's not easy.
Burning out and burning out, the biggest thing for that is you lose connection with the why. Like, why am I doing this if I'm in the same? People have a real need for growth. Like you think about different needs, and everybody has a different category of this, like whether it's Maslow's hierarchy,
Mhm.
Tony Robbins has 6 needs, like there's all kinds of stuff. But the one that we tend to have is growth. And as soon as you feel like you're not growing anymore, that's when people tend to have that existential crisis and they feel burnt out. Like nothing's mattering. It doesn't make a difference what they do. They're still at the same level. There's no growth.
Yeah. And that was when my phone would ring and I would hear from someone who would say, "I need my profile done, I need my resume done because it's
Mm.
time. I'm no longer challenged and I'm no longer growing."
Yeah.
And to me, that type of a person is that person who is steering their career, who feels that they have the freedom and the mobility and they're empowered to change. And I love that. I just wish more people experience that. What is it? They allow themselves to reframe and change.
Yeah. I think some people want growth professionally, they're like, I'm not doing anything like, or they want growth in terms of compensation. Let's just say that's an obvious one that's easy to measure. It's like, so I'm like, I just can't, I need growth in this area. And everybody has different internal thresholds. If they're, once they go below their threshold, it'll finally trigger action. And as consultants or coaches that, and people like, what made that shift? They just went below their threshold.
Yeah.
For some people, it's work-life balance because they just are like, I am no longer seeing my kids, or I went from an hour with my kids a day to 15 minutes. And so they went below their threshold, something internally in their belief system, how they grew up, whatever. A lot of people don't even know what their thresholds are. Defining those can be useful, but I went below that. Donna, I need help because I got to get into a job with more work-life balance. Whatever they want to grow in, or whatever they need to get back up to their threshold, it's going to be different for people, but that's needing to grow up back above their threshold, whether it's a new threshold or an old threshold, seems to be the trigger.
It's what Tony Robbins says about procrastination. It's you start to act when the pain of not doing it becomes worse than the pain
Yeah.
of doing it.
Yeah.
Same
Moderate
deal.
pain is the worst enemy. It's like,
Yeah.
and I know you've experienced this. You're talking to somebody and they're just like in moderate pain, and they're like, they're like, I really am not happy, but I'm comfortable enough to where I'm not going to take action. Whereas you get somebody who's never again, I'm never experienced this. I'm never going to be talked to this again. I'm never going to like when they have that intense pain, that's when people change. But how do you ratchet up that pain on yourself without actually going through the adversity? Figure that out and you figured everything out.
Yeah. I think that's the next course, right?
Yes.
Figure
Yeah.
out how to create that pain within yourself.
What for you? So you're easily classified an executive. What is the vision for you that gets you excited? You talked about changing from doing ultimate freedom, doing it on your own, eat, sleeping, this to now family, mortgage, all these different things, established platform. So what do you vision for yourself? What gets you excited as far as the next step for yourself, your brand, what you want to do on the side?
That's a good question, Isaiah. It's funny for us, right? We sit in a situation where we're talking to people, we're telling them they need a career vision, they need to be empowered, and then turn the tables. Where do I see myself? Where do I want
Yeah.
to go? No one asks of you. But I will say this, I really do feel that for me, it is so this is interesting. I was listening
Don't say serving others. It's got to be something for you.
No, you touched upon something.
Yeah.
I was listening to everyone's talking about Taylor Swift and like how huge I don't know. I couldn't
I didn't
name
know
a
you're going to go
single
there.
song. I don't know anything about these people. I have my pop culture knowledge like pretty
Sure.
much ends at the year 2000.
Okay.
That's where I checked out. But everyone's talking about her. And I was watching a reel on Instagram. It was Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about what did she do to get to the level that she is. And he says that it's the depth of her marketing, that of what she didn't just try to be everything to everybody, but she found her niche and
Mm.
she deeply marketed herself. And that I
Mm.
found fascinating. Fascinating. I think, Isaiah, I think you've done that with your audience. I think that you've created really strong relationships with your audience, your clients, and you're always there for them. You're riding with them through their career. And I love that. That's at least from an outsider's perspective. That's what I see you doing. And I feel that is what I need to do better at. And that is more of the vision that I'm creating for myself is looking at vision board media and saying, it's no longer about the one-offs. It's no longer about everybody, but it's really about saying, who is that avatar? Who is that client? And how can we stay with them?
Mm.
How can we help them through their career? How can we become more of that agency that provides a broader, deeper experience?
Yeah.
So that's where my brain has been of late. That's the future that I'm trying to manifest.
That's really cool. It's funny that you say that because I read an article, and it's funny you have these things that change your perspective. I read an article on Taylor Swift 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was traveling all the time speaking to these universities, and I was in an airport. I read this article, and it talked about the same kind of thing. Like, how did she? It was right when maybe it was almost 10 years ago. It's right when she crossed over to pop out of country because she, of course, was just country when she
Mhm.
started. And but she was country for 10, 11 years. She dominated that niche for 10 to 11, probably more. Not that's just counting the time where she was actually a star. Like before that, it could have been 15, 20 years,
Mhm.
however young she was. And then she crossed over. And so at the time, I was like, oh my God, I got to go out there and I got to get all these segments. Okay, so I'm helping these people. Now I got to go help these types of people. And I want to be helping these people. I want to be everybody. Like I wanted to
Mhm.
cross over, like we talked about the wall. I wanted to be
Yeah.
all these different segments. And I tried that. Every one of them failed early on. Like I'm talking like my first year, first couple of years.
Mm.
And then I read this article and changed my perspective. I was like, no, I'm going to do this for these people, this specific niche, maybe for 10 or 20 years before I'm able to help anybody else.
Yeah.
And I just came to that. I'm like, I mean, obviously, if because this wasn't a small, unsuccessful person, this is somebody who's one of the articles about how she's the most successful as far as at least money goes or brand goes
Mhm.
forever. So yeah, it's a great example. It's a good teaching point because I think a lot of people diversify, dilute themselves way too early and they don't go deep enough.
Yeah. I think that's true for just regular professionals, right? Know your target, know what you're aiming for. Don't spray and pray.
Oh,
Niche in,
yeah.
have that vision, know what you're good at. And that's what people want to hire.
High barrier to entry skills are still going to be the ones that will have the lasting power. You definitely need to be well rounded. So hopefully nothing should ever be confused. Like you have to have those high barrier to entry skills if you want to differentiate. Sure, be well rounded, be personable, but that's only if you have the deep knowledge, like the specialized skill.
Yeah.
Um, good talk today, Donna. Uh,
Always awesome talking to you. I love this.
yeah, me too. Bye.